Hey, what's up, everybody? Peter Extus O'Coffer here today. Gonna take a new direction with the YouTube channel. I've been wanting to do this for a while. This new direction is kind of, I guess, a sub theme, classic songs. And today I'm going to be talking my podcast and the video show mention my love of Prince. So I got on the Purple Rain T-shirt today, and we're gonna be doing "Let's Go Crazy" off the Purple Rain album, the lead song. This album changed, or this song really changed my life. Was aware of Prince, from going back to Controversy, and was aware of the songs on 1999, but I wasn't hooked. I was like, okay, this guy's there's something here with him, but it was really "Let's Go Crazy" hearing that really I was like, that's the dude I want to. That's what I want to do. I want to be an artist, and it was the catalyst was "Let's Go Crazy" by Prince. Now, interestingly enough, in June of 1984, or early June, 3 days after high school, I went to boot camp for the Marine Corps, Parris Island, South Carolina. So I was gone the whole summer. And, when you're in boot camp, I don't think it's changed. Maybe it has. I doubt it. But, there's no radio around, there's no TV around. You get letters. And if someone doesn't put something in the letter, you don't know what's going on in the world. So I had no idea Purple Rain was out there. A couple weeks later, the movie dropped. When I left, When Doves Cry was not on the radio yet. So that's kind of what happened. I got off the bus and or got off the plane back to Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State University. Within a few days, I heard "Let's Go Crazy," and it just blew my mind. I was like, I'd never heard anything like this, and here I am, lover of R&B, and my love of funk was starting to grow, and then my love of classic rock, and Aerosmith, Kiss, the Beatles, the Doors, and my mind literally went. So I was at the dorm, and I was just like, I got to get this dude, and so I was walked about 20 minutes across the Ohio State University campus, and got a cassette of all of Prince's albums at the time, and still have them actually. And I got a double album cassette. One side had "Dirty Mind," the other had "Controversy." Interestingly enough, leaving boot camp, as we had a little, they gave us a nice little check and some cash. I bought my first boombox, and at this time, that was the first time I'd ever seen a CD player. So 1984, my first CD player. There were no CDs at the time. I was like, a compact disc, what's that? So interesting stuff happening at this time, and so yeah, I bought those Prince cassettes and I wore them out. So what attracted me to "Let's Go Crazy"? Well, as I said, I'm coming out of you know classic rock roots and the funk. R&B, and this song combined that. It starts off. There's a little bit of Bruce Springsteen in there, and of course he ends like Jimi Hendrix. And it's a pop song, but it's still funky. And there's just nothing else like it. And obviously, I got Purple Rain and was blown away by the whole album. And eventually too, I'm getting classic albums. And obviously, I'm going to do one on Purple Rain. But up to that point, I mean, other than Sly Stone's "Stand," that album, which I'm also going to do that combined rock and roll and funk. It was just, that was '68, so we're talking, you know, 15 plus years later. Prince drops Purple Rain, and there's only one other album really out there that's been like it. So that's what really got me. Prince has always said I'm more of my style is more of Santana than Hendrix. Hendrix, and it's true. I mean, um, when Prince always, even when he went hard rock or metal, even metalish, he always had a clean tone, and Jimi Hendrix had that blues tone, that dirty tone, and so in that and um, Santana always had that clean tone, and Prince liked, particularly later in the mid, in this era for him for 2007 to 2012, where really I think he really did some really amazing guitar work. Uh, he really played in the high notes really well, like Santana does. So I agree with Prince. He's more Santana than Hendrix, but Prince can get very Hendrix-esque, unlike anybody in my opinion, other than Hendrix himself at times. And most guitarists kind of meld different things and build their own thing, and you sometimes with them you can see their influences, but usually it's one. And Prince can kind of toggle and jump back and forth between Hendrix and Santana. And really, I mean, since Prince's passing and the deluge of live stuff um, that has ended up on YouTube for Prince, um, is really, to me, um, elevated Prince as far as his guitar playing. And now, obviously, at some point, I'm going to do a Prince uh, a branding special, and talk about how he brands. But Prince is when Rolling Stone did their top 100 guitarists of all time, I believe Prince is ranked 27. And when you look at his official releases, his album releases, he only has, well, now he has 3 live. Um, and if you count Sign of the Times, that's 4. But at the time, he had the the mid 2000s release. Purple Rain was out of print. Sign of the Times was out of print, and so that was it. That was it. And so Prince, like Jimi Hendrix, his best guitar playing was live. That's not every guitar player, but for Prince it was. And now that a lot of live Prince is on YouTube, and the family no longer owns his catalog, and they're not. Prince was notorious for snatching anything related to him off of YouTube when he was alive, and the family kind of kept that tradition going. But that tradition now is not going. The owners of the catalog have wisely, I think, made the decision to keep a lot of the stuff that the fans are putting on, and the stuff that the bootlegs from the vault. And when I do the Prince, branding of Prince, I'll give my theory on how so much material from Prince's vault escaped. And I mean, what it boils down to is Prince knew that was going on. I mean, I can understand, a few things, but there's massive leaking from that vault. And I know Prince had a lot of employees, but come on. I mean, I think it was part of, subtly and smartly, part of Prince's branding. But, so yeah, I mean, but going back to Prince as a guitar player, I think that, you know, when you start factoring in the stuff on YouTube, Prince is a top 5 guitarist of all time. And personally, I put him at 2. I mean, he's um, the most versatile guitar player ever. I mean, the one thing is you can't really, and as I just got some guitars and I'm playing around with them, the difference between Hendrix and everybody else, I'm also going to do a Jimi Hendrix and Brandy, but everybody else kind of looks at the guitar as a instrument, and Hendrix looked at the guitar as an instrument and as a special effects device. And so I was like, well, listen to everybody else in Hendrix. I mean, like, And Hendrix did have a guy that he hired who made pedals just for him. So my theory was always, Hendrix had in a box in London somewhere, because he's interesting. He never owned a home. When he got big, he stayed in luxury hotels, but he never owned a home. So my theory for a long time was, Jimmy stirs a box somewhere of you know, guitar pedals that only Jimmy used and yada 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 that were never recreated. But that's not the case. I mean, Jimmy basically, and I've also listened to Jimmy and playing on synthesizers for years. I mean, I was like, Jimmy really, you know, did a lot of things in the guitar that you could only do with a synthesizer. And of course, I mean, it was the mid early 73, 75, 76 when the synthesizers really hit big and you could take them on the road and do different things. They were a lot larger and sort of a niche thing back in the late 60s. um, but Prince is the most versatile guitarist of all time. I mean, when you take the dive and listen to his live stuff, you know, the one thing is you can recreate. It may take you 7 or 8, different guitarists to recreate what Prince could do. Um, and if you get someone now, I'm of the mindset, if you get someone now who thinks outside the box, like Hendrix did, and looks at the at the guitar as a something like a synthesizer as well as a guitar, then you could probably reproduce Jimmy as well. And that's kind of my thing. When you look at the genius, can you reproduce? Can you reproduce this? So yeah, so that's my take there. On Prince's guitar playing and whatnot. Back to "Let's Go Crazy" in the song. I mean, it is that ending is quite amazing. It's your standard verse chorus. It's about good and evil, but it opens up with I mean, some online described it as a eulogy, but it's really a sermon. And this is, a lot of people from Love Sexy going back. A lot of people consider this the classic Prince era. I love this era because that's where Prince had the duality and the tension between his spirituality slash religion and sexuality, and this feeds into that, because this is a song about good versus evil and the whole elevator, and in passing, being that Prince died on an elevator where his body was found, it sort of feeds into it's interesting that he starts off talking about the elevator and "Let's Go Crazy," and he passes on the elevator. Now, Purple Rain was Prince's breakout album. I mean, 1999 was punching a hole in the wall, and Purple Rain was kicking a door, you know kicking a bigger hole and walking through it. And and One Dove's Cry was the first single, was released before the movie and the album, and hit #1. And "Let's Go Crazy" ended up hitting #1. So, even though I'm alluding to the elevator and the passing and all that, the breakout song and album was "When Doves Cry." Um, but Prince did a 12-inch version of this as well, which gets kind of really a little trippy, slightly psychedelic, and really funky, and um, and there's an extended period where where Prince and the Revolution just jam. And one of the interesting things is Dr. Fink is keyboardist. He said just in the spirit of "Let's Go Crazy," I'm just gonna hit keys, and I'm not gonna care whether it's in tune or not. And that's kind of what and Prince loved it. And Prince opens Purple Rain with "Let's Go Crazy," and so and that's what captures your attention in the movie. You know, I don't know what Prince originally, if know a little of the background of the movie. Prince was working on the story, and he brought in a screenwriter and rearranged the story and kept it for the most part similar to how Prince wanted. But the opening up with "Let's Go Crazy" was brilliant. On the script writer and who was also the director of the movie, because it just grabs you right away. I mean, with the sermon. And by the way, I mean it's the 12-inch version in the movie too. So the trippy extended jam that I talk about's in the movie, and actually Prince is playing the keyboards in this, and I think he spins around and plays behind his back, and just he's just smacking keys, and it just it works. And so yeah, so that finally getting some Prince on the channel. There's gonna be a lot more coming with classic songs, or I mean, with the classic albums. And obviously, I'm gonna do a big, dive into Prince when I do his episode on branding. Yeah, so that's it for today's episode. Prince's keyboardist, I call him Dr. Fink. Matt Fink, Dr. Fink, because he always wore scrubs for some reason. And sometimes he'd actually, well before COVID, back in the mid '80s, he had on a mask and he would play with a mask. So he had on his green or light blue scrubs, and became Dr. Fink, and still out there. Went around, toured with Prince, his own Prince tribute band for many years, but when he passed and the revolution went in the road, they're like, "Thank, dude." And so he kind of dropped that, and I don't know if he's back, with the tribute band. And he had a radio show for a while too. So, but yeah, Dr. Fink, Matt Fink, great keyboardist. Listen to his solo and Head from Dirty Mind, and if you can, go back to the early '80s and find a live version of Head, and Dr. Fink, ripping that solo, amazing. So yeah, I'm gonna what's coming. Well, Rapper's Delight is the next song in the pipeline. So and then I think I'm gonna talk about some of the epic rock songs. We're gonna have kind of a subgenre of classic songs and opera rock songs. So the first one to look at that, in that genre will be November Rain and Bohemian Rhapsody. Because there's a lot of story to both of those. And then, when I talk about epic classic rock songs, I'm, Dream On, Freebird, um, Sweet Child of Mine, and Stairway to Heaven, of course. Epic songs that are really, what's the word? There are common themes for those songs I just named, but it's really something that really only happened in classic rock, and it's unique to classic rock. I'm starting to think of other like epic songs in different genres, and there are some. I'm starting to put those together, and we'll look at that down the road. But they don't carry the same themes and the cohesiveness like the classic rock. But as we go through that, I'll talk about some of those other songs and ask for your input, and we'll look at those those other epic type of songs. When I'm thinking epic, I I don't I was watching on YouTube a hard rock or metal documentary, and everybody knows that classic rock and rock, they acknowledge their roots, but then they said, well, classical music, and at first I was like, you're full of shit. Classical music and hard rock don't go together. But really, those songs I just named, when you know the music tells a story by itself, like classical music would. I mean, classical music. I mean, if you really sit and listen to it, I love to relax sometimes and meditate and listen to classical music. But if you know, uh, there's a story in that, and it's almost like a play to words. And those songs I just named, Stairway to Heaven. If you take the lyrics and the singing away, it still tells a story. I mean, and it's epic in that way. I would, you know, I thought about calling them rock operas, but Meatloaf kind of talked about his rock opera, and Alice Cooper, his live show was operatic a little bit. So I didn't want to steal the opera thing. So so that's why I'm going with you know the. The epic version. So here we go. Yep, got the phone in the background. It is what it is. And I just had to edit that phone out. This kind of what happens when trying different locations and doing different things. So yeah, I was saying, with the rock opera, you know, Alice Cooper kind of did a rock opera live, and Meatloaf kind of did, in his music and told stories and stuff like that. So I decided not to call these rock operas and call them epic because they're more, geared towards classical music. Than even though I think there were definitely elements of opera at times with Queen and with you know Freddie Mercury's presentation and whatnot. So interesting. So interesting. It's been an interesting experience filming this because phone interruption and text interruption. The good old New York Times. I might have to disable that. I don't know. But anyway, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. And hey, as I said, I got 4 albums out there. They're on here on YouTube, and they're also on the all the streaming channels. Exodus, XODUS. Book 1 is the first album. The 317 Volume 1 is the second. Uh, Cyberfunk 2020 is the third, and Eve's Call is the fourth. So give it a listen, and I will see you next episode.